Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jallo,
Yes.
the contract for the supply of the two generators, the Social Security generators, G5 and G6 at Brikama,
Yes.
which you signed in 2007. Is that correct?
Yes.
This was just for the supply of the generators, is that not correct?
For the supply of the,
The sets, the two sets. The contract was just for the supply of the sets.
well, that's how it turned out to be.
Sorry?
I said the understanding I had, you know, when they asked us to buy the generators, you know, was that NAWEC should buy the generators and Social Security should provide the funds, because the explanation we had was that the generators, everything has been dismantled, you know, and they are parked. So the assumption I had on that day in the minister's office was it was for a complete supply.
Mr. Jallo, can you look at SC 97,
Yeah.
which is SC 97. The contract between GTG and NAWEC
Yes.
is attached, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you read clause 6, please?
The price quoted in clause 2 of this agreement excludes any auxiliary or additional supplies and installation of the equipment.
That's the contract you signed for the supply of the two generators.
Yes.
Thank you. Can I have the exhibit back? The generators were supplied.
The generators, yes, they were supplied.
Mr. Jallo, you mentioned in your testimony about the booster, the NAWEC's land at Fajara Booster Station, which was being occupied by GCG. You also testified that Mr. I believe Bilal Bazi had brought a contract to you, but you had not signed it.
Who?
A contract was brought to you regarding that site, but you had refused to sign it.
Yes, I did.
Do you recall what the terms of the contract were?
Well, I cannot remember the details, but I could remember reading in the contract that they can construct whatever they want to build in the property. So that raised an alarm, because if something is, if you borrow something, an easement is given to you, so if you tell me that you can build anything that you want there, you can build a very expensive structure there without consultation. So this was one of the reasons why I refused to sign it. And moreover, I felt that there was no need for the contract, because they said, you know, they had the permission to use the place, so they can use it for what they wanted to use it, but not to build expensive structures or whatever there. So this was why I said I would not sign the contract.
The contract was a lease for a period of years. 5 years, I believe, was what was proposed.
No, I cannot remember
Okay.
the number of years.
GTG carried out rehabilitation on the site, did they not?
Yes, they did some renovation.
Is it correct that they rehabilitated the storage building?
The what building?
Storage. You had a storage building on the site. It was rehabilitated, and it was then used to house, or became where the TND were.
Yeah, we had some, I think it was 2 buildings with rooms. So the buildings were rehabilitated, yes, to make them habitable or usable.
Is it correct that they rehabilitated the office building, which was currently used for the water service connection?
Like the specifics, it could be.
Is it correct that rehabilitated the civil works building, which was being used by the masons and carpenters? And it became where the TND materials were stored.
I cannot remember the details now, but the structures are still there, I think.
Is it correct that they rehabilitated the workshop building, which was being used for the pipe works for water connection?
You know, for me, the understanding, what I wanted was to house the staff who were moving from the electricity department location in Banjul. So all these additional things, I cannot say whether it was done during my presence or in my absence.
You did not go to the site?
Since I left NAWEC, no.
This was in 2008. The rehabilitation would have been finished by the time you left NAWEC and came back. You
Yes.
did not go to the site
Yes.
during that period?
I went there a few times, but like all the details that you are saying about the service connection teams or whatever, you know, I'm not sure about that. It could be, but what I'm saying is that I cannot remember exactly what and what they transformed there.
Mr. Jallo, it is our client's position that they did sign a lease, but they cannot recall with whom or have a copy. You are saying you did not sign a lease.
I did not sign any lease with them.
Does this document look familiar? It's unsigned. I just want him to look at it.
Well, for the record, Mr. Fadi was required to provide the contract when he was last here, but he hasn't produced it.
Mr. Fadi had indicated we cannot find a signed contract. We only have a draft. This is the draft.
I'll be objecting to a draft.
I am not asking to tender it. I'm
Please
only
wait.
asking the witness to
What
look
is
at
the
it.
question? You're showing it to the witness.
Yes, he said he saw a contract. I'm asking him if he recognizes this document as what he saw at the time. Show it to the witness. Does that document look familiar?
Well, it's been 10 years.
Sorry?
I said it's been almost 10 years.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Can you bring the document back? Mr. Jallo, is it not correct that the premises was to be occupied in exchange for all the rehabilitation?
No, they were supposed to occupy the offices that they have rehabilitated for themselves, and also for the equipment that they say they were going to leave there for, put there for safekeeping or whatever.
Mr. Jallo, is it not correct that for most of the contracts or the projects that NAWEC undertakes, it is part of the terms of the contract that a site is provided for the contractor?
You mean like international contracts?
Yes.
Projects?
Yes.
For international contracts, you know, sometimes it's part of the arrangement for NAVEC to assist the contractor with, you know, habitation, cohabitation or whatever. Yes, it happens.
Mr. Jallo, do you know who GPS is?
Yes.
Who are they?
They supply NAVEC with equipment, materials. They also do the servicing.
GPS,
G?
Global Power Systems.
Global Power Supply Service. Global?
Sorry. It's Global Power Systems.
Global Power System. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, you were saying?
Yes, I said I know them.
And I asked you how.
Because they have a long, ongoing arrangement with NAVEC. Since the installation of the Deutz generators, I think in 2000, 2001, you know, they've been servicing them. They supervise the servicing and overhaul of the generators, especially the Deutz generators at NAVEC.
Do you know who the shareholders are?
I don't know the shareholders.
Do you know who the contact person for GPS is or was when you were there, when you were at NAWEC?
When I was there, it was Jean-Claude.
Sorry?
Jean-Claude.
Jean-Claude.
Jean-Claude. And Mr. Delayed, Mr. I think Terry. Terry, yes.
Mr. Jallo, Are you aware that GPS took GTG to court for unpaid bills relating to supply of equipment?
No,
You're not aware?
I'm not aware. For me, I don't know much about, some of these contractors, because the way I operate at NAWEC, I let the procurement department or the power generation department to be dealing with these people, because they are more interconnected. So I only contact them like when there is a problem, when there is an emergency, then I make a follow-up. But apart from that, I allow them to, to be coordinating with the relevant divisions or departments that they service.
Mr. Jallo, you had seemed to indicate during your testimony that Global Power Systems was part of Mr. Bazi's or part of GTG.
In my testimony?
Yes. I am putting it to you that Global Electrical Group Limited and GTG, Global Trading Group Limited, have nothing to do with Global Power Systems.
Well, I don't think I said
Exactly.
like they were part of GTG or GEG, but I know for sure that, they work together in the Gambia here. They work together. So I don't know whether they were brought here by GTG, GEG, because when I became managing director in 2006, GPS was on the ground, and they were more or less controlling that aspect of the business, that is the generation mostly, the power generation side of the business.
Mr. Jallo, GPS, I believe, supplies NAWEC with spare parts. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, has GTG ever bidded for spare parts contract?
GTG? Spare parts. No, for spare parts, I cannot remember. I cannot remember.
Mr. Jallo, with regards to the supply of fuel to NAWEC during your tenure, could Gambians have afforded to do without the supply of fuel?
You mean without the supply of fuel in the country?
Sorry, what's the question?
Could Gambians have afforded to do without the supply of fuel?
Could Gambia?
Gambians, the citizen of Gambians, all of us, could we have afforded to do without the supply of fuel?
That's
HFO.
We still are not getting the question.
The question is, could Gambians have afforded to do without the supply of HF4?
Could Gambians have afforded?
Well, Gambia never needed HFO because they have generators that use HFO. So I don't know what you're trying to drive at or whatever.
So could, in that case, NAWEC have afforded to do without the supply of fuel under the terms it was supplied?
Well, you are asking me to speculate
No, I'm just asking
because
you.
there was a monopoly in place. So you never know. Maybe you have to understand this contract, I think, started in 2000. This fuel supply contract, and definitely in business, you know, the economy is never stagnant. What was good in 2000 may not be good for 5 or 10 years. And if you encourage competition, you may, you know, it could go either way, but you encourage competition because you want to benefit from the competitive environment. So,
Mr. Jallo, NAWEC enjoyed unlimited supply of fuel on a credit basis for a long period of time. Is that not correct?
yes, they used to get fuel on credit basis, yes.
And this benefited NAWEC because it could give uninterrupted generation of electricity.
Yeah, from that sense, yes, but you also have to look at whether it's the, you know, it was the best in terms of pricing structure or the commitments that were envisaged in the first contract and in the second contract. Because all this, you have to take everything, you know, in totality. Because a contract was signed in 2000 whereby a tank farm would have been built for NAWEC, and NAWEC would have saved, you know, with that tank farm, NAWEC would have saved $10,800 a day, you know, for a consignment of 7 days, NAWEC would have saved close to $80,000. So if you do all that calculations,
Mr. Jallo, NAWEC enjoyed free transportation and storage.
but that was not the,
That was what was agreed to thereafter. There was a letter to
Well,
that effect.
Can the
But-
witness be allowed to answer the question, please?
okay, you are saying that was thereafter. I did not see it in writing. But in 2007, when Mr. Bazi when he brought the contract to
Mr.
me-
Jallo, you've
No,
testified.
no,
The
I'm
commission is
testifying
aware
because
of your testimony.
that's what I put in my testimony.
That's fine.
He
It's
was, he should have explained to me when he came with the contract. This contract was, I was not the managing director in 2000. This contract was signed initially in 2000, and these were the terms. Okay, now it is being renewed in 2007. He should have told me about the tank farm. He did not tell me. He should have told me about the compensation and whatever transpired between him and the managing director. He negotiated the compensation with, or the NAWEC management team that he negotiated the compensation with, and what was compensated and the year it was done. But I was left in the blind, and to tell you the truth, you know, I want this thing to be cleared for the record.
Mr.
He
Jallo.
should never have deceived me with regards to that contract.
Mr. Jallo,
Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
NAWEC is a company.
Yes.
It's a continuing entity.
Yes.
So what was discussed prior to you becoming MD is in the records. They're all before this commission. It was not hidden from you.
Yeah.
Was it? A yes or no?
No, Mrs. Andrews, you have to understand the strategy that was being used by this company and who